to the first conference workshop. We would also welcome our online participants. And we have here our Director ISCM Ananda Balayogi Bhavnani, sir. Our guest from the Anglia Ruskin University, Cambridge, UK, Dr. Annie. Welcome. We have Dr. Baishali, who is with us more than a decade. She is our adjunct faculty. And we have our guest speaker, Ms. Revati, and also our ISCM team here and the participants. So we would like to hear a few words from our director, and we'll go to the first presentation by Ms. Revati. So, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shobana. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome each and every one of you who's here physically and online for this monumental event, an international conference on healthfulness through music therapy. And I think the first question is, what is healthfulness? And I think that's what we are going to find out today and tomorrow. And such a pleasure to have Dr. Annie with us, who has made a long trip across the seas, Dr. Baishali, Revati, and of course, Dr. Shobana, who is the Shakti, the power behind everything that is happening in music therapy. Let's give her a big round of applause. We have an amazing team here, Bhuvana, Janita, Hari, Anusha, and all our amazing students. And also it is so beautiful to have so many of you, Dr. Venkateshan, Priyanka, and others here. I wish this event all success. And I'm sure that through this workshop today, we are going to enrich our understanding of music therapy and its role in salatogenesis, which is whole person wellness. So whole person wellness cannot be achieved through drugs. It cannot be achieved through pharmaceutical interventions. Pharmaceutical interventions can reduce your blood pressure. Definitely, yes. They can put a stent in your blocked arteries. Yes. Can they give you a sense of whole person healing? And the answer is no. That is why music therapy is part of this healthcare university as integrative medicine. So wishing the event all success and my gratitude to each and everyone who is joining us here today. Let's make a wonderful day today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Before we start our session, as a sign of appreciation, we would like to honor our first speaker, Ms. Revati.
I invite Dr. Ananda Balayogi Bhavnani sir and Shobna ma'am to honor our resource person for the day, Ms. Revati. I take immense pleasure in introducing our first resource person. Ms. Revati Indra Raja is highly skilled psychologist with extensive experience addressing behavioral and emotional concerns for clients of all ages. She does recognize the profound benefits of music therapy for relaxation, self-expression, emotional regulation, and overall mental health, and she has a postgraduate diploma in music therapy. She has a strong background in conducting assessments, designing patient training and parent training modules, and in facilitating therapist training workshops. Ma'am has worked with children with emotional and behavioral concerns, including behavioral therapy for children with autism, ADHD, and specific learning disability. Welcome, ma'am. The stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm really, really happy to be here. Can you hear me? Oh, thank you. It's really good to be here today. I hope that we can be interactive as much as possible, of course. I've got a couple of activities that I would like you all to do. and as we continue talking. And of course, at the end, if anybody has any ideas, thoughts that they want to share, would love to discuss that if we have the time. Yes. So today we're basically here to, okay, I don't know whether I don't think it's working. Did it? Okay. So we're basically here to, today's conversation I want to have is to talk about the intersection of counseling psychology and music therapy. So we want to look at how how there are some principles that can be integrated from counseling psychology and how we can elevate the practice of music therapy. This is a relationship that's not merely academic. It profoundly shapes how we understand and utilize music as a tool for healing and personal growth. So what we're looking at for right now is I want you to look at the color and see the 5 main emotions in the middle. Yeah, and if you can consolidate where all your emotions were and pick from the center 5, which is it that you would like to share? And on the count of 3, just everybody say either joy, love, fear, anger, sadness, or surprise. Yeah? Everybody ready? Okay. 1, 2, 3. That's lovely. Oh, that's powerful, right? So that is the power of music. And I think it's so nice that we're all starting off today with joy. And I think that's a great way for us to continue the next 2 days. And thank you so much for doing this activity. All right, so moving forward, counseling psychology. So what is counseling psychology? We are talking about, it's a professional part of psychology that maintains a focus on facilitating personal and interpersonal functioning across the lifespan. So this field, it works with social, vocational, educational, health-related, developmental, and organizational concerns. It can be used, over multiple fields. It involves a broad range of culturally sensitive practices, so it helps people with their well-being, alleviating distress, resolving crisis, and increasing their ability basically to function better in our lives. And I think that is the similarity between music therapy and counseling psychology. We're all trying to just make everybody's lives better. So when we're looking at the scope of psychology, it is interventions, both brief and long-term. It works in education settings, private practice, healthcare facilities. The focus is on holistic and systematic therapy approaches that work with the environment and the relationships between people. So what are the key what are the common things that are there? I think these are the things that will overlap between music therapy and counseling psychology. But these are the main theories and approaches that I'm going to go through it really quickly. Yeah. So there's a cognitive behavior therapy, which focuses on modifying dysfunctional thinking and behavior. It uses things like cognitive restructuring and behavioral techniques that affect change. Then there's the humanistic approaches, like techniques like person-centered. These are where the themes of empathy, unconditional positive regard, and the therapeutic relationship, the use of the therapeutic relationship in change, all of that falls more into the humanistic spaces. This is where self-actualization and personal growth is where we focus here. Then there's the psychodynamic. Here I'm sure you all have all heard of Freud at some point, but it's not just Freud, it's also Freud and his followers. So there's the unconscious experience processes and past experiences. So here there is the talk therapy. This is where it actually came from. The exploring of childhood experiences, examining unresolved conflicts in a person's life. Then there's something called solution-focused brief therapy. Here it is where it concentrates not on what the problem is, but what are the solutions that somebody is trying to go for. This emphasizes the building of the client's existing strengths and resources so that you can find quick and effective solutions as in the here and now. Then, of course, there's mindfulness and acceptance-based therapies, which again will be something that we all know about. Here, there is mindfulness-based stress reduction, acceptance and commitment therapy. There's something called DBT, that's dialectical behavior therapy. So here also the focus is present moment awareness, acceptance, non-judgmental attitudes towards your own thoughts and feelings, not just towards other people. But I think that's something we always miss out on, not being critical towards our own selves. And then, of course, it is in counseling psychology, the integrative and eclectic approaches, which is combining all of these things based on what your client particularly needs. So a client who comes in might not always be ready for a CBT. They might want long-term talk therapy, right? So depending on what your client needs, changing or shifting or bringing in techniques from other therapy theories to work with them. So these are the bases of different types of approaches in counseling psychology. And now let's go to music therapy. I think this is something I don't need to talk too much about. All of you all have way more information, but I'll quickly go through things that where psychology has been integrated at various points of time. So there's, of course, CBT with music therapy. So here you will see the changing of negative thought patterns and behaviors using here the things like structured rhythmic exercises, music-based cognitive tasks are used to reinforce the positive behaviors. I'm not sure, everybody here is a music therapist or studying for music therapy? No. Okay, so then maybe I'll talk a little more about it. So basically here in applications of music therapy, how will it be used? It's like something like songwriting, right? So encouraging a client or a patient, depending on where you are and how you're practicing, to write songs that express their negative thoughts and then work on altering the lyrics to reflect more positive or constructive perspectives. So this is, of course, a long-term process depending on your client, depending on what kind of rapport you have built. You can't just immediately change anything, but that comes with it. So for example, a client with anxiety might write a song detailing their worries, and then with the therapist's guidance, they can modify the lyrics to encompass coping strategies and thoughts about resilience, right? Then if you're looking at the next theory, which is humanistic approach, like we said earlier, these are empathy, unconditional positive regard, non-judgmental stance. So the focus is on personal growth and self-actualization. So here it is client-centered therapy principles, which are, it is allowing for the emergence of that innate ability of all human beings to heal and grow using musical experiences. So what would this look like? It would be like creating a safe space so that you can use music in whatever way that you want without allowing the client to try something new, never have tried some kind of musical instrument, maybe a song, creation of that, so that they can express or explore that in the safe space of your musical space. So here it could be like an improvisation session or just even creation of or touching an instrument that they've never used before. Yeah, so that would be there. Then using psychodynamic. Here, it's uncovering the unconscious thoughts and feelings. So you often, when you're looking at psychodynamic, you're looking at earlier experiences, childhood experiences, things that you're not aware of because you don't understand what it is, you've not cognitively understood as a child, right? So here you uncover these unconscious thoughts and feelings using music. So I think it was an interesting one for all of us to have the word joy come up. So clearly that is something that's an unconscious process that comes out. All of us have different reasons for why that music would have expressed that particular emotion. Yeah. Then in applications, the other way would, some of the applications is musical storytelling. So therefore encouraging clients to create musical narratives and improvise music that represents their inner world. Here the therapist then will interpret that music and start to uncover those underlying issues that will allow for more healing or change to happen for the client. Yeah, so now the next slide. Does anybody have any questions? Am I going too fast? No? All right. Okay, so I think we've talked. All right, so these are the ones that I just explained. So now what I also wanted to show you is that it's not just how it can be used in how counseling psychology can be used in music therapy, but a lot of music therapy techniques can be used in counseling psychology as well. And it has been used in really good ways, because sometimes talk therapy is needed, but there is something that needs to unlock the conversation for the client in the session, even when we're doing counseling. And so therefore, some of these techniques can be used in counseling. So here, this is, again, guided imagery, I think, is something that a lot of people already know about, but it basically uses imagery to help clients reach a relaxed state and to express their and explore their inner thoughts. Here, like a soothing track is played. You are looked at. You start to imagine where you can go. It takes you away from your current worries, and that might allow somebody who's overwhelmed, somebody who's really dealing with difficulties, to be able to open up and talk without feeling unsafe. Right? Sometimes you need to go away from where your brain is taking you in order to be able to open up and talk. Another would be, of course, general relaxation techniques coupled with music. So here, again, there will be guided instructions. Now, there are two ways. So the guided imagery is taking you away mentally, whereas relaxation, we're looking at the bodily, allowing yourself to stress and then release. And that release allows you to release the tension or stress using music. So yeah, then if you're looking at the other two, I think these are more of the consequences of using these kind of spaces. And both of these can be used even in group settings, right? Not just in the last two I'm talking about for emotional expression and personal development. So here we're looking at musical, emotional catharsis using music. So there, drum circles would be a really great way to do something like that. Here, the clients participate in a group drum circle where each person is allowed to kind of communicate how they're feeling. So that's a way of releasing things. And then when you're looking at a personal development space, you're looking at resilience, adaptability. So here you're looking at things that work in a workshop kind of a space. Like today, if we had sat together and decided that we're going to work on a particular soft skill that everybody wants to work on, especially for children with autism, I think one of the nicest ways we would try to do it was to teach them impulse control. So how to adapt to a situation when you're sitting with a lot of people where you have to wait for your turn. I think that is something even adults sometimes find difficult to do. And it becomes a very easy thing for us to do in a group setting. And that falls under personal development. Yeah. So therefore, as you can see, both of them have a lot of things that are interconnected, both counseling psychology and music therapy. They're basically very complementary in there as fields, and that they can be integrated and they can enhance the therapeutic effectiveness. Or incorporating counseling psychology principles into music therapy, it can broaden and deepen your therapeutic outcomes. And so music therapists can draw counseling psychology, in-depth knowledge of humans and the therapeutic relationship to comprehensively work with their clients and to customize the interventions. Yeah. So now we're going to go to the next slide. Okay, so these are skills. These are the basic skills that any therapist use working with another human being in order to help them grow needs to have. Yeah, it is the basics of anybody who wants to call themselves a therapist needs to use these and understand these so that they can be the most effective that they can be. So I'll spend some time with this. If anybody doesn't understand a particular thing or want to know more, we should discuss it. So do let me know. Yeah. Number one is active listening. And I think all of you all are doing that today. So good job. But basically, it's paying full attention to the client and showing that you're genuinely interested in what they're saying. So how do you do this? What are the ways in which you can show a client who might be coming in with insecurities, who might be coming in scared, worried that what they're saying is not important, or it's, how people get into their own minds. So the basic things are nodding, maintaining eye contact, summarizing, paraphrasing, all of that will come in as we go forward. Yeah. And just making the client feel like they are seen, they are heard. So therefore, you won't be using your phone in a session, right? You won't be distracted by other sounds. You try and keep your face pointed and be sure that they understand that you understand them. right? Then there is empathy. Now, what is empathy? It's understanding and sharing in the feelings of your client. So this will be verbally expressing understanding, for example, saying that I can see that you're feeling very sad, right? Or, oh, this seems to make you very happy. Simple things like that. Then using an empathetic tone. Hopefully I used an empathetic tone that you all heard just now. Then validating the client's feelings. So if they say, I'm feeling very sad, say, I can see that you're feeling very sad. Do you need anything? Repeating or just making them feel it's okay to feel what they're feeling. Yeah. Then would be building rapport. If you don't build rapport, there's no way the safety and space between the client and you can ever build, right? Rapport is the basic foundation. Sometimes every session you meet a client, you have to rebuild rapport. It takes 5 minutes sometimes to rebuild rapport. If you know a client for a long time, if you don't know them the first time, it might take an entire session. It might take a month of sessions for rapport to build, depending on who the client is and what is happening, right? So here, this would be basically, what does it mean? Creating comfort and a trusting environment and relationship with your client. This means showing warmth, genuine respect, genuineness, and having a open body language. What is open body language? I think that's also an important thing to know, is that when you cross your arms, when you cross your legs, when you look down, when you're not paying attention in those ways in the body, unconsciously, the other person realizes you're not interested. Even if you are interested and you're just used to sitting in a certain way, if you have that body posture that's closed, then they will not feel connected, and that will stop your rapport building process from happening. Then there's open-ended questions. What are open-ended questions? Does anybody have a question right now? Okay, so open-ended questions are not yes or no questions. Basically, they're questions that allow for longer answers. So what I did was close-ended. I did not give you time to actually say more than a yes or no when I said, do you have any questions, right? So here it would be, can you tell me something more about your experience? How do you feel about whatever it is that the client was talking about? So both of these things, these kind of questions allow for a deeper understanding of what the client is going through, and you might gain more data to understand what you want to do when you're working with your client. Yeah. Then reflecting and paraphrasing. So basically, this is restating what your client has said in your own words and showing understanding, and also in order for you to confirm that you have correctly understood. So sometimes you have an understanding in your mind, but the client doesn't mean that. So when repeating yourself or restating what they've said, for example, if they've said, oh, this was a really bad day, and and you say, oh, it sounds like you were very angry. And the client will either say, yes, I was very angry, or the client will say, no, I was not angry, I was disappointed. That changes the way that you understand what is happening in that interaction, if you are correctly empathized with your client or not. So therefore, this is a very important tool in your therapeutic relationship, which is reflecting and paraphrasing. Yeah. So some of the ways in which you could also say it is, what I'm hearing you say is, it sounds like, right? So that then they also have the ability to say, no, that's not what I'm trying to say, in a very non-judged manner. Yeah. Now, clarification. Sometimes you might not understand what the client is trying to tell you. And I'm talking about this whether it be in counseling psychology or in music therapy, because it is very important to understand the client's mental space when they're there. So here, asking questions to make sure you've understood correctly. So what was that? Can you explain what you meant by this? Or I'm not sure I understand. Can you elaborate? Can you tell me more about this thing? So that these are certain ways in which to just connect better. Yeah. Then summarizing. So at the end of the session, or when sometimes a client can go on a monologue and talk for like 10 minutes straight without stopping. So this summarizing is a great way to make sure that all the main points have been understood, and so that the client doesn't go on a tangent away from what the main topic they wanted to actually bring up in the session, right? So here, this would be to reiterate the key points of the discussion, and so that you know that both you and the client are on the same page. So these would be like, for example, if the client comes and says, I had a fight with my mother, I am really upset, something else brought up a memory that was terrible, I froze when I was sitting in in class and I couldn't answer, whatever it might be, they will talk multiple other things also. So making sure that these things that I just stated are said allows you to all be on the same page. Yeah. Now, positive reinforcement. These it's encouraging and reinforcing positive behavior and progress. So things, you verbal affirmations, like you've made great progress, I can see how hard you're working, to even if it's not a goal that you've achieved, but the non-stop work that's happening gets done. And confrontation. I think confrontation is something that all of us get a little nervous about when we're sitting in front of a client, because you don't know how the client will react. But it's also an extremely powerful tool when you're working in any therapeutic setting. So here it's gently challenging the client to address inconsistencies or self-defeating behaviors. So if your client is coming in saying that, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this, I don't know what is happening in my life, where they say, I've never been able to win any competitions, but in the last session they said I got a award at some particular thing. So bringing up these inconsistencies so that you realize that there's some narratives that's not fitting right, but in a way that is respectful, in a way that's non-judgmental, and to bring that awareness in the client, because the client might not realize that they're doing it, right? They're not doing it purposely, oftentimes. So that's important. Okay, few more. We're almost done with this little bit. Okay, then setting goals. So helping the client define and work towards specific objectives. Sometimes a client will come in not knowing what they want. They'll be like, I've never done this before. I've never worked with anybody before. I don't know what I want, but I've got so many things. So then sitting and discussing a first couple of sessions, even with your rapport building, might be helping for that goal setting to occur. What do you want to actually work on? Understanding how much time the client actually has, whether it be financially, time-wise, whether they have the time to work on all these other things, because otherwise you're not going to be helping them in the way that they really need to be helped. Even if you think that something has to be worked on, but if they have only 5 times that they're going to come to you, it might be another goal that might have to be worked on, right? So understanding that goal setting, and so it has to be collaborative in nature and set realistic, measurable, and achievable goals for your client. Yeah. Then offering support. So providing encouragement, reassurance, so that the client feels validated and understood. Things like, I'm here for you. It's okay to feel this way. Then confidentiality. Yes, that's really, really important. So making sure that the client's information is kept private. Of course, unless there's immediate danger to the client or to another person. And always make sure to let the client know about this break, of when a confidentiality break happens, so that you all both are on the same page in case of these kind of situations. What are the limits of the confidentiality? Because the client should be allowed to decide for themselves what all they want to be able to share. And so that, and also because very often they're scared. A lot of, especially young adults, when they come in, especially in the Indian context, our families are so intertwined that we get worried that our therapist is going to go and talk to our parents, because that might happen. The parent will come and talk, whether however old the child will be in India, you know how it is, right? So the client has to feel safe. They're not going to feel safe unless they understand the limits of confidentiality in your therapeutic space, right? Then ethical boundaries. Now, maintaining professional boundaries to protect the client-therapist relationship. I think this is something that we don't talk enough about, but it's also really, really important. So avoiding dual relationships. So therefore, if you have a friend's friend or a friend's sister, you cannot do therapy with them, right? Because then you're going to be thinking about your friend rather than your friend's sister in that session. Unconsciously, it's not anybody's fault. Nobody is superpowered. We're humans, right? So understanding that basic ethical boundaries, right, that you should not try and cross, so that in the end, what are we looking for growth, for healing for your client, for your patient, however you might say it. And that is what you have to think of when you decide whether to take on a client or not. And you have to look at the ethical boundaries. Your client is not going to. They're going to say, please, 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 I think you're really good. I want to work with you, but you will have to maintain your own boundary. Yeah. So, yeah, and looking at personal biases and adhering to those guidelines. And like we said earlier, I think even in active listening, non-verbal communication. So that would include body language, facial expression, gestures, attentiveness, and support. So open posture, smiling, nodding, appropriate eye contact. So understanding all of these counseling skills takes practice, it takes commitment, but it's so important for us to have a effective therapeutic interventions. Now, okay, so almost coming to the end of our session today. I think what I want, if you all are okay with doing a little activity now, would be to break into groups of 4 or 5. You've got this little board. I want you to pick 2 or 3 that you all can sit and discuss for 5-10 minutes and choose one thing that you would like to show the rest of the group, how it would look like in a music therapy session. Okay, I don't know whether that was very confusing. I will repeat it. Okay, I want you to, okay, let's just choose one. I don't think we have enough time. I want you to choose any of these skills and discuss it in your group, okay, of 4 or 5 people. So I think we've got this here. Yeah. Ignore the up to 6 skills. I'm saying up to 2 skills now because we don't have enough time, okay? But I want you to look at how a music therapist can use this in an active or passive way. If you want to demonstrate an example, you can. I will come to you and talk to you while you all are doing this, if you have any questions. Okay, could you divide into groups of 4 or 5? I can see that group is having quite an interesting conversation. Okay, so if anybody would like to talk about anything interesting that came up in your discussion or an example you would like to share with us, even 1 or 2 would be lovely.
So our group, we discussed 3 skills as such: active listening, building rapport, and non-verbal communications.
We discussed more about, I guess, rapport building as such. So in music therapy, in a very normal ways. So say example, you are my client or you are my patient, and we have a basic conversation, and then I get to know about your favorite song, and I instantly start singing that song. Then the instant connection is happened. But what she came up with was it also depends on the severity of the patient. So yeah.
So sometime in our experience, we had a patient who was so depressed. She was not even motivated enough to stand up and walk. She was on a wheelchair with bent head and no body movements as such. So imagine building a rapport with that kind of person. So they're not even verbal. So if at all, for the example which she gave, we asked her favorite song and we start the session by singing her favorite song. So that was not even possible. We almost took 6 to 8 sessions to even have an eye contact, for her to lift her head up and have an eye contact. So then we, with the caretaker's support, we found out that she likes bhajans of a particular deity. And we just sat with her and sang bhajans for 6 sessions. There was no communication, there's no reaction, there's nothing happening. And we didn't even know whether she was actually listening or hearing, or we didn't even know what was happening. But only after 6 sessions, we had an eye contact and she moved and she said, she gave a thumbs up actually. She was a teacher in a high school in a rural sector.
Nice.
So that is how the rapport was
Lovely,
built. That was
lovely.
the
I
next
think-
experience
Thank
from our
you so
past.
much. That's a really wonderful example that you're.
Imagine
Yeah.
severity matters and the
Yes.
language mattered. I was not from Pondicherry initially, and my Tamil was a little lame initially when I started, and she couldn't connect. And when Professor Bhuwana was having a conversation, she actually lifted her head up and she had the eye contact first. So then I realized, like, my
All
lack
the
of
layers.
dialects or the language played an important role.
Yes. So
So
that's
that is our
so
experience.
yeah. So that all falls so beautifully under rapport building, understanding all of these dynamics in connecting with your client. Great. Does anybody else feel like they want to share something?
We discussed about empathy. It is obviously standing in patient's shoes. So we'll face several patients with several different health conditions. Like somebody will be suffering from critical illness, and somebody will be suffering from anxiety, clinical anxiety, stress, pain, and chronic illness. And we should behave and we should treat patients according to their illness. We should stand in their perspective and we should address them. And summarizing, obviously, we should keep everything in mind, whom we are meeting, which patient we are treating. And obviously, the patient will not end up with a single session. Obviously, they'll come again, they'll
Yes.
have revisits to us. And by the time, if we are if we are addressing a specific thing that we have noted in the previous session, that will help to feel them, they are too concerned about them. We are too concerned about them. It will make them feel we are too concerned about them. That will be a really good thing to be with patients.
Thank you so much. Oh, I'm so glad that you all had such interesting conversations. Okay, so I think based on that, I want to just go through a couple of examples that shows basically what you all discussed. So we won't go too into it. So here is a case of a girl, 28, who experienced trauma due to a severe accident, and that has caused anxiety and emotional distress. So music therapy here, when was used with her, guided imagery and expressive arts was used. However, you had to put in also counseling psychology principles to help her. So here the therapeutic relationship and empathy, as you all were discussing, became really, really important in order for the change to even occur. Your active listening, validation techniques were used to make her feel safe and understood. And then with that, music was used in order for her to express and process her trauma more effectively. So even narrative therapy was used to reconstruct her story and to give her different perspective. You know, when you've gone through something very traumatic, you can only see one particular way of it. When you use other kinds of ways to express yourself, you might be able to take yourself a step back and look at the same thing in a different manner, right? So that's one particular thing. Then another example would be somebody who's suffering from manic depressive. Here, songwriting and rhythmic exercises were used, but CBT was needed in order to help them with this person. So this is all ways in which they work together, yeah, the integrative. Of course, sometimes music therapy is used all by itself. Sometimes counseling psychology is used all by itself. But right now we're looking at how it would work together. Yeah, and so songwriting was used to allow him to express his negative thoughts. CBT was used to reframe and challenge thoughts that were there, and this allowed him to address negative patterns and improve mood and motivation. And the last one here is a 7-year-old with autism. Had difficulties with social interactions and communication. So music was used for improvisation and things like structured music games. However, what behavior therapy, right, is also part of counseling psychology, was used to create individualized interventions with music therapy goals as well. And social skills training and behavioral reinforcement using musical activities were put together. So all of these things will allow for turn taking to be taught, joint attention to be shown and used in a therapeutic environment. So all of these examples are showing you how it can be used as we keep going, as we keep studying. I think one thing about psychology, counseling, all of these, music therapy, is that it's never ending, it's evolving. We're always learning something new. We're always trying to figure out how we can use it with other, complementary fields. And I think that is something that's a never ending process for all of us. And I hope we keep going down that line of education. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you all had a good start. Do you have any questions you want to ask, or are we good? Yeah. Okay, thank you.